whenever I'm having a hard day or whatever, I'm just like, yep, whatever. Everybody farts.
Welcome back to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we are going to continue our conversation with our lively and entertaining guest, the clairvoyant medium Santina Grace. We learn more from failures than from successes.
For sure.
If we're present and if we're aware. So at times we often talk about tolerance and compassion being two of the finest attributes that a human being can have. And you talk about both of those attributes having a higher energy. Can you explain that a bit? When you meet a high energy person, you meet a low energy person. I'm sure that you've met some low energy people. So how do you help them level up?
Rise up. Yeah. A lot of times, I will say it's difficult because once somebody digs their heels in and they want to be miserable, sometimes it's really hard to get them out of the cycle that they find themselves in. And I honestly feel like it really starts with dreams and asking somebody about what is your aspirations? What are your wishes? What are your goals? Because right away that sends them up, right? They want to think about what they want to become, not where they're stuck, So that's where I try to, whenever I meet somebody who's in a low space, I try to kind of go, well, if you could have a genie in a bottle and ask for a wish, what would your wish be? What would be the thing that would bring you joy and happiness? And that's something you had asked me earlier before we started the recording this evening, what I'm focused on. And I think right now I'm focused on trying to manifest more joy for myself in this life, because I just feel at this stage a lot of satisfaction. I'm really kind of in a space of contentment and all of that stuff. But how do I create joy for myself, and how do I make that infectious and create joy for other people? And that's something I'm working on. So I appreciate the question about people with raising their vibes, because I'm going to carry that with me in my consciousness now whenever I'm seeing people who are down.
You had mentioned before on one of our podcasts about helping people recognize the potential within themselves. How do you help people bring that out?
A lot of times people just don't want to see what their own beauty is and what their own inner light is. I don't know why this is such a challenge for so many, but they choose to see their dimness. They choose to see their imperfections. They choose to focus on they're critical. I feel like so many of us are so self-critical. I used to be. That was a lesson that I had to master. I've gotten good at just being like, hey, I gave it my all, or maybe you didn't do the best job, but you'll get it next time. So it's about having self-compassion too, as well as compassion for other people.
When a person comes in and they tell me I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm lazy, I'm this, I'm that, I say, when you look in the mirror, does the mirror tell you that?
Mm-hmm.
They say, no. I said, who tells you that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I do.
Right. Yeah, I call it a bad word, but the inner mean lady voice, or the inner mean girl voice is in the head. Yeah.
But we often have to ask people, where'd that voice come from?
Yeah. A lot of times it's programming. It's what you see in society. It's what you've learned from some of your parents and other ancestors. So yeah, it comes from a bunch of places. So sometimes you have to think about, what do I need to hold on to and what do I need to let go of?
Well, I'm of the opinion that no child's born with that voice.
I agree with you. I don't think any child is born with that voice or the voice of fear, because kids come in fearless.
Yes, they
If
are.
they thought about trying to take their first step and how many times they'd fall down, they'd never walk. Children would never walk.
Well, courage is the ability to deal with fear. And you were talking earlier about people being trapped within themselves, unable to discover their own potential. I believe that a lot of folks don't conceptualize or can't separate the meaning between pleasure and joy.
That's true. Yeah, very different things.
Very much so.
Yeah, joy for me is something that is lasting. So, and it's not based on anything material. It's not based on physical. Like joy for me is more of a spiritual experience. Um, Pleasure for me is like a really great dinner or a really great ice cream sundae or something like that. It's very tangible. It's very much experienced, through physical means. Um, so for me, joy is about something that it just sparks that inner light. It just sparks that. That's what joy is, and I'm trying to figure out how to kind of find that inner joy with myself in a space where I don't have to really do anything to find it. And that's what I was saying to you. I'm trying to learn how to not feel like I have to do everything all the time.
Well, what we try to do is explain to people that pleasure needs sustained. And I always use the example of eating potato chips.
Yeah.
As long as you're eating potato chips, you feel the pleasure. But as soon as you put the potato chips down, that pleasure is gone. Where joy doesn't need that constant sustained. It doesn't
No.
need that. It's that feeling. So, Santina, what we often do is try to find an anchoring thought for a person.
Yeah. I like to kind of say I try to focus on balance. When I have balance in my life, I have joy. So when I can feel that I've given enough energy to what I need to do for, my livelihood, I've given enough energy to the people who I love, who are around me. I've given myself time to just recharge and be by myself. I've watered my plants in the garden and I've done the things, that brings me joy. Those are the things that balance me out. So I think it's about understanding what is it that balances each individual out. And I think everybody has to discover that for themselves. It's different for every person.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what most people come. Most people do not come to therapy seeing flying dragons or ghosts or any of these other things, and or believing that they've sold their soul to Satan. People come in with minds of uncertainty, low self-concept, low self-esteem, anxiety about the world, maybe choices that they've made in the past that they just can't get over doing that. And those are the type of things that we can really grasp our hands around and work with.
Yeah, I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing where they either feel stuck or they feel somehow unable to overcome because it takes another person's viewpoint sometimes to kind of it's almost like when you're in a mall or something and you have to look at the map and it says you are here. You need that you are here map or that person to kind of say, "Hey, this is where you are right now." And back to the whole concept of impermanence, you aren't going to always be right here, but it's just where you are right now.
Yes,
Hmm.
that's where we are in the moment. We need some guideposts. We need to find our baseline. We need to have somebody assist us in what's your concept of, I hear this term a lot at times, ascended beings.
Yeah. So, ascended masters beings, they are like, to me, the ultimate teachers. These are people who have really mastered and understood what it is to, I feel like, emulate what they want in this lifetime. So, if they want to be, like if you think of the concept of any of the ascended masters, like, you know, Mary in the Christian faith, she's an ascended master of like sorrow and despair. Like she understands sacrifice. She understands that. So these are teachers. That's how I look at ascended masters. They came into a lifetime and said, "Go ahead, max me out. Let me do the most. Let me see how much I can overcome." If you look at Buddha, I mean, I feel that he came here to kind of understand patience and peace and how to create that space for people and how to lead the way for them to find that within themselves through meditation and all of that. So there's just so many cool things and so many different ascended masters to learn from. I don't know. You can go down a rabbit hole, but I love talking about that. I love learning from them. There's still so much that I feel that I could learn um, from all of them.
Well, tell me some people from history or present, or probably many people. I don't think people come out and have rallies calling themselves ascended masters.
Mm-mm.
But besides Mary, whom I never thought of as an ascended master, but
Yeah,
now that you bring that to my attention, yes.
yeah. She had a lot to go through. I mean, and even here's the thing, it's like I look at this like again, it's the stories of these people. I feel like there's so many people that I look at that I think, wow, you're mastering this in your life. But they don't view it in that way. They view it in the way of like, I can't get past all of these challenges. Why do the same things keep happening? And it's like, oh, you're mastering it. You're on your way. Like I feel like that's where I want to come in and kind of encourage people. And I feel like you're in that same team. You're in that same like cheering section of you got this, push through it. You have to experience discomfort and a little bit of pain in order to grow. It's the whole you've got to skin your knee a little bit to understand what it means to fall.
So, who would you consider an ascended
Hmm.
master? A lot of people would view them as floating around in the sky.
You know what? The funny thing is, I've been getting into historical figures lately, and I watched a whole bunch of different documentaries and read some things on Lincoln. And the fact that this man taught himself to read and then learned from really, really great orators to become one himself. He had to get like just pounded at debates by different people who did it better for him to learn to get better. And I don't know, I learned about his life story and I just felt like, wow, that is an amazing story of resilience and for perseverance against all odds. I mean, talk about having odds stacked against you and nobody's helping you out and you just figure it out for yourself. That to me is an ascended master. I mean, and it's a famous, person that most people know, but I look at that lifetime and go, wow, that was a mastery. And it's not for the things that, we remember him for. I think it's the personal triumphs that he experienced through that lifetime that got him to be a president of the United States.
Well, some motivational speakers will list this person of all the defeats that they'd suffered, all the disappointments they'd suffer, and they said, "This person's Abraham Lincoln."
Yeah, I know.
Recognized it was one of the finest human beings to walk the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, I just really felt a lot of inspiration from watching, and learning about all the things that he had overcome. It just kind of makes you realize how convenient our lives are. You know, the fact that his father or his mother died at a young age, and then his father just left he and his sister to fend for themselves in the middle of nowhere while he went to find another, mother for them to caretake for them. And it's like, I don't know, that just no one would think about that nowadays. You would never think about leaving your
Oh,
kids
yeah.
at home without a babysitter, but this was simply just different, harder
Well,
times.
the loss of his first true love of his
Mhm.
life when she
That's
passed away.
right.
His son that passed away while he was in office.
That's right. Oh, he had a couple of them pass. Yeah.
And the trying to hold the country together through the Civil War.
Hmm.
He would write letters of condolences not only to Union soldiers' mothers, but to Confederate mothers also.
Right. Right. And that to me, personification of that compassion, like what we were just talking about with collective consciousness. So, yeah, I would say that's somebody who mastered it in this lifetime, but had to go through an immense amount of suffering to get there.
Well,
And that's the thing. It's like there is no easy button. There is no boop, I'm just going to be enlightened and that's all it's going to be. No, you've got to go through some stuff.
Well, we talked before. Could you say a little bit more about people wanting to hit the easy button? In the 12-step world, we call it the easier, softer way.
Easier, softer
Yeah.
way. Okay. Talk to me about what that is.
Well,
I've never heard of that
it
concept.
says if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these steps we balked for. We thought we could find the easier, softer way. However, we could not.
Yeah.
Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked you to accept this with courage and without fear. And here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery.
Yeah. And you know what that kind of reminds me of a little bit too, of this concept of attachment. Because, and we're in this whole permanence and impermanence thing. And for me, attachment, when you talk about a 12-step program, I think the ultimate attachment is an addiction. And there's a lot of fear in that, losing that connection and that attachment. And there's a lot of similarities with that and this concept of impermanence, because it's this feeling of kind of losing the control with it. And sometimes it's almost like this feeling of like, well, yeah, you've got to let go of that holding on to that, on that that clinging so tightly to something that you think helps you and supports you, but really holds you back.
One of the best definitions I've heard of addiction was you give up everything for one thing, and in recovery, you give up one thing to gain everything.
Oh, that's a really beautiful thought. I love that.
However, just like in life, acceptance is always the prelude to change.
Mm-hmm.
Until we can accept the fact that I often use this talk at rehabs. I'll say, well, let's say Santina and Jim live 3 blocks away from school, and we walk to school every day. And after 2 blocks, there's a bully there and beats us both up and takes our lunch money. So, being good addicts, we do the same thing the next day, of course. Until one day, Santina pokes me in the ribs and says, "Hey, Jim, let's go another way to school." So we go to another way to school, and we get to school, we're not beat up, and we have our lunch money. And then I ask people, does that make us weak?
Hmm.
No.
No. Yeah.
It makes us use a wise mind.
That's right.
But our self-will cannot conquer all problems.
Right.
We have to have acceptance.
And we have to have it. It goes back to like just not being so harsh and critical on ourselves and forgiving ourselves so many times for making a mistake, and not having that, like we talked about earlier, that voice in our head that we learn over the years that just kind of, it's not our hype man. It's the opposite of a hype man. It's like anti-hype man in our heads. So, yeah.
We often work with people asking to give themselves permission. Give themselves permission to be sad. Give themselves permission to laugh. Give themselves permission to love. Give themselves permission to sit on the couch.
Exactly.
We talked pre-show about, again, talking about the myth of productivity, which I love to talk about with people, because where do you think this conceptualization come, whether it's from this country or that if we're sitting down, then we're lazy?
Yeah. I think I think it's something that it feels like this country feels like it was built on. I think it's this concept of like making yourself. And to some degree, even talking about Lincoln, I mean, that man worked. I don't think there was like an idle moment, but I also feel there had to have been, because in order to kind of move ahead and move forward, you have to have quiet reflection. You have to have that you are here moment in your head to know where you need to go next, to make goals for yourself, to move.
Well, when you talk about an ascended master, like perhaps Lincoln was,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that he recognized that he had a sense of urgency
Yeah.
about him. That perhaps he realized that he recognized the impermanence of life.
Right. I think you're right. Yeah. He probably, I mean, I don't know that he knew he was going to go quite as soon as he did, but I think the concept was always there from the moment that his mother passed away. I think that was something that he learned early on in his life, and
Well, in the Buddhist world, death defines life,
it's true.
which means that it's important to recognize that we're not going to live forever. We're living right now, and to appreciate the moment, appreciate what's right in front of you, rather than like you and I talk about the time traveling.
Right. And I think too, just it's about like savoring the moments and trying to just like laugh and be lighthearted and not be super serious all the time. Because sometimes life just isn't it's not fun when it's serious all the time. And I don't know, I'm in this space of joy and I just feel like there's got to be humor and joy as well.
Well, in the 12-step world, we often talk about it's our purpose to be happy, joyous, and free. And that's what we want. And uh, back in the 40s, AA nearly broke up because there were just too many requirements to be in this group, that group. And there was a group out in Ohio that actually had 62 membership requirements. I don't know how they came up with all those. But then they came up with Rule 63, which is don't take yourself too seriously.
I love that. That would be my favorite role. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. It's like whenever I'm having a hard day or whatever, I'm just like, yep, whatever. Everybody farts. You know what I mean? And my grandmother would always say, if you want to just make somebody laugh, just talk about farts.
Well, that would make people laugh.
And I can't even keep a straight face. So,
well, that talks about the humanness
right.
of people.
And that to me is like, how can we take ourselves so serious when you think about that?
Well, in the 12-step world, Santina, we often ask people, how do you make God laugh? I tell them your plans.
Right. That's 100%. Because they will switch.
It's the thought of expectations. It's unreal expectations, whether they're imposed on ourselves, unrealistic expectations we believe others have of us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I learned a long time ago that it's none of my business what other people think of me. And I've kept that.
That's a Buddhist concept.
Yeah.
On the next podcast, we'll be continuing our conversation with the delightful clairvoyant medium, Santina Grace. At the end of every podcast, what we like to do is offer a prescription that really can be filled anywhere, and that's fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. We urge you to do a kindness for another and do a kindness for yourself. To forgive yourself and to forgive another. And if we're all not God's creatures, then none of us are. Please be good to yourself today and every day. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.